You couldn't tell me this an hour ago? Jackson Cole's voice was firm, steady, but cold enough to frost the edges of the phone. On the other end, a breath thin, shaky. I'm sorry, Naomi whispered. I really tried, but the call ended with nothing more than that. No explanation, no details. Just a sudden collapse of a night he had cautiously, almost reluctantly, allowed himself to hope for. Jackson Cole ended the call without another word. He didn't do outbursts. He didn't raise his voice. That wasn't his style. But he did value time his own, and that of others. And tonight, it had been wasted. He'd dressed with care for the first time in years. He'd even arrived early. But now, he pushed back his chair, dropped a generous tip on the untouched table, and walked out through the hushed whispers of impressed diners. The maitre d' called behind him. Have a pleasant evening, Mr. Cole. He gave a faint nod and stepped into the cool Charleston air. But this wasn't the beginning of the story, not really. Several hours earlier, Naomi Brooks' day had already fallen apart. At the corner clinic where she worked part-time, Naomi stood in the cramped office of her supervisor, Mr. Halberd, a man with too much authority and too little humanity. She had finished a double shift, covered for a co-worker, and was expecting her paycheck. She needed it desperately. Sir, she said softly, holding her hands together to keep them from trembling. My payment for last week still hasn't come through. I need it today for the babysitter. For food. Please. Halberd didn't even look up from his computer. You'll get it when we process it, he replied, bored. Could be a week. Could be next pay cycle. I'm busy. A week? Naomi's voice cracked. But you said, he sighed dramatically, finally lifting his eyes. Look, Naomi, you were late 2 days last week, and your family emergencies are becoming an issue. We're short-staffed. I need reliability. Naomi swallowed hard. My daughter had an asthma attack. I brought a doctor's note. He waved her off. Everyone's got excuses. The humiliation burned hot in her chest. Please, I really need that check. Halberd leaned back in his chair, expression tightening. You're dismissed for today. I'll let you know when payroll pushes your hours. Nah. Sir, please. Naomi has snapped. You're dismissed. No check. No compassion. No recourse. By the time she walked out the back door of the clinic, tears stung her eyes. She had no money to pay the babysitter for the night, so when the sitter called an hour later saying she couldn't come without payment, Naomi's heart dropped further. Please, Naomi begged over the phone. Just 2 hours. I have a very important appointment. Sorry, the sitter said. I'm not working for free. You want charity? Try someone else. Click. Humiliation layered on top of exhaustion. She had spent years rebuilding after her husband walked out. But today, she felt small, worn, invisible. The girl sensed it. 2 Ava, 7, quietly holding her mother's hand, and little Lena pressing her cheek against Naomi's hip as they walked to the car. Mommy, Ava whispered, are we still going to meet your friend? Naomi tried to smile. Honey, I don't know. Do. She couldn't take them into a place like Reverie Grill. Not with their mismatched braids and bargain bin dresses. Not with her wrinkled blouse and puffy eyes. Not with her heart feeling like torn paper. The weight of it finally broke her. By the time evening fell, Naomi sat beside her old SUV in the restaurant's parking lot, knees pulled close, arms around her daughters, sobbing into her hands while the sky dimmed into lavender. That was the woman Jackson saw when he stepped into the parking lot after his ruined reservation. He didn't expect to see anyone. He certainly didn't expect to see her. At first he heard only quiet crying, a sound that froze him mid-step. Then he noticed the Navy SUV, the 2 little girls sitting in silence beside their mother, and Naomi herself folded in on her grief. Her blouse was wrinkled. Her curls were frizzed. Her phone lay face down on the pavement, like she'd dropped it in despair. She looked nothing like the poised woman in the photo his sister sent him. She looked real and hurting. Jackson hesitated, then walked closer. Naomi lifted her head abruptly, startled. When she recognized him, panic flashed across her face, raw, genuine, mortifying. Mr. Cole, oh God. She wiped at her cheeks with frantic hands. I'm so sorry you had to see me like this." The girls stared at him, wide-eyed. One hugged a small stuffed elephant like a lifeline. Naomi swallowed, her voice trembling. "I didn't mean to cancel. Everything went wrong. My boss refused to pay me today. I couldn't pay the sitter. I brought the girls with me, but I couldn't walk in there like this. And I know it looks awful and unprofessional, and—" Jackson raised a hand gently, not to silence her, but to give her space to breathe. "Are they hungry?" he asked softly. She blinked at him through tears. "What?" "The girls." He nodded toward them. "Have they had dinner?" Naomi shook her head, bewildered. "There's a diner a few blocks away," he said. "Good food. No dress code. You're all welcome to come with me." She stared at him as though unsure whether to believe him. "Why?" she whispered. Jackson glanced at her daughters again, two little faces that didn't belong in a parking lot with a crying mother. "Because it's dinner time," he said simply. He turned toward his car. Ava tugged Naomi's sleeve. "Mommy, I'm hungry." "No." Naomi closed her eyes, took a shaky breath, and whispered, "Okay, girls, let's go." She lifted them into their seats, wiped her face one more time, and followed Jackson. During the drive, no one spoke much. The girls looked around quietly. Naomi clasped her hands so tightly her knuckles went white. Jackson kept his eyes on the road, giving her the dignity of silence. The diner greeted them with warm lights and the smell of grilled burgers and fries. The waitress called everyone "hone," and the girls were given crayons and menus before they even sat down. Jackson watched Naomi as she stared at the laminated menu without really seeing it. "You didn't owe me an explanation," he said finally. Her eyes flicked up to him, glassy and unsure. He added, "Keeter, and you didn't disappoint me." Her breath caught. "Life's messy," he murmured. "You showed up anyway." In that softly lit booth, with clinking plates and the squeak of vinyl seats around them, something fragile and human stirred a connection formed not from perfection, but from brokenness laid bare. Jackson didn't know where this night was heading, but for the first time in years, the empty spaces in his life didn't feel quite so empty. If this moment touched your heart, like this video and comment where you're watching from someone nearby might be watching with you. Naomi sat across from Jackson in the worn leather booth of the diner, her posture tight, like she was bracing for impact. Her daughters, Ava and Lena, colored quietly on their paper placemats with stubby crayons the waitress had handed them. The older girl hummed softly under her breath while the younger one pointed out the animals printed on the kids' menu. Their ease contrasted sharply with their mother's tension. Jackson didn't say much. He didn't need to. Years in boardrooms had taught him the value of silence and the weight of presence. Instead, he studied Naomi without making her feel observed. She kept tugging at the collar of her blouse, adjusting her sleeves, avoiding his eyes. The waitress returned with a warm smile and a pad in her hand. "What can I get y'all started with?" Jackson glanced at Naomi. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. "Pancakes," Ava said brightly. "With strawberries," Lena nodded solemnly. "And syrup, the thick kind." Jackson smiled at the waitress. "2 kid-sized strawberry pancakes. Add an extra side of bacon, please." He turned slightly. "Naomi?" She shook her head, voice small. "Just water. I'm fine." "You should eat," he said gently. She hesitated, then gave a short nod. Scrambled eggs. Toast. Nothing fancy." The waitress winked. "We don't do fancy here, sugar. Just honest food." When she walked away, Naomi let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. She looked at Jackson then, really looked. His silvering hair, neatly trimmed beard, tailored jacket over a simple black shirt. Nothing about him screamed billionaire. But everything about him felt like still water, calm, but deep. "I never meant to drag you into this," she murmured. "You didn't," he replied. She looked down at her folded hands. "This wasn't supposed to be my life." Jackson waited. "I went to nursing school," she said quietly. "Graduated early, top of my class. Got married, thought I had it all figured out." Her laugh was bitter and short. "Then he left. I was 6 months pregnant with Lena. One day he kissed Ava on the forehead, told me he needed a break, and never came back." Jackson didn't interrupt. He let her speak, her voice gaining rhythm like a confession finally allowed air. "I begged him to stay, to fight for us, but he said he wasn't cut out for responsibility. He moved to Atlanta with a woman he met at a conference. She paused, eyes burning. That was 3 years ago. Haven't seen a dime of child support since. Jackson's jaw tightened, but his expression remained unreadable. I work at a community clinic part-time, Naomi continued. Pick up cleaning shifts at night when I can. I'm trying to get my full RN license. But the classes cost more than I can afford. I'm tired, Mr. Cole. Jackson, he said softly. She nodded, barely. I'm tired, Jackson. Tired of being looked at like I'm a mistake. Like I'm what happens when a girl makes bad choices. Tired of making sure my girls smile when all I want to do is fall apart. Ava looked up suddenly from her drawing. Mommy? Naomi wiped her eyes quickly and smiled. Yes, baby? Do you like your new friend? Naomi glanced at Jackson, startled. He gave Ava a small, kind smile. I think she's amazing. Ava beamed and returned to her crayons. Naomi blinked back fresh tears. I don't usually cry in parking lots, she said after a pause, or accept dinner from strangers. You didn't accept dinner from a stranger, he said. You accepted kindness. That's different. Their food arrived, breaking the moment. The smell of pancakes and eggs filled the air, grounding them back in something simple and real. The girls dug in eagerly, chattering now about cartoons and glitter shoes. Naomi watched them, her shoulders slowly lowering. She took a bite of toast, then another. The silence that followed was no longer heavy. It was comfortable. After a while, Jackson leaned forward. You have every right to be tired. You're carrying more than most. But tonight, maybe let someone else carry a little of it. Just for a while. Naomi looked at him, stunned by the gentleness in his voice. Why are you really here? She asked. Why did you even agree to a blind date with a single mother of 2? Jackson's expression didn't change. Because my sister wouldn't shut up about you. No. Naomi laughed, startled by the sound of her own laughter. And, he added, because I've been alone too long. I've been to fundraisers, board meetings, yacht parties. I've shaken hands with senators and billionaires, but no one has looked at me the way your daughter just did. Naomi's voice cracked. And how was that? Like I mattered. The words settled between them. Quiet but powerful. Outside, the night deepened. Inside, the lights from the neon sign flickered softly against the window. Naomi sat back and closed her eyes for a second. You know, she said slowly, I almost didn't come at all. Even with the sitter, I almost backed out. Why? Because I didn't think someone like you would actually show up. I didn't think someone like you would be real, he replied. The truth hung in the air, fragile and new. The girls had finished their food and were now focused on a maze on the back of the placemat. Ava leaned into Lena, helping her trace the lines. Naomi watched them with something close to peace. Jackson picked up the bill without a word. Naomi reached for her purse instinctively. Don't, he said gently. Please. She hesitated, then let her hand fall. As they rose to leave, Jackson opened the door for them. Naomi paused as she stepped outside. Thank you, she said, for not walking away when you had every reason to. I didn't have a reason, he said, just a choice. They stood there for a moment, under the soft hum of the diner lights, while the girls skipped ahead to the car. It wasn't a date. It wasn't a rescue. It was something quieter, maybe the start of something honest. The drive back to Naomi's apartment was quiet. Not strained, just quiet in the kind of way that feels like everyone is wrapped in their own thoughts. Ava and Lena had climbed into the back seat of Jackson's SUV like they'd done it before, yawning as the sugar crash from dinner took its toll. Naomi sat in the passenger seat, hands folded in her lap, the fluorescent lights of Charleston passing in brief flickers across her face. Jackson didn't press her. He understood silence, understood that sometimes it spoke louder than questions. Her apartment complex was modest, clean, but weathered. The stucco walls were cracked in places, and the lot had more rusted sedans than luxury cars. But the porch lights were all lit, and a few neighbors sat out on folding chairs, chatting in the warm night air. Naomi shifted uncomfortably as Jackson pulled into a visitor space near her building. You don't have to walk us in, she said quickly, reaching for the door handle. I'm not in a rush, Jackson replied. She didn't argue, not because she agreed, but because arguing felt like too much energy. They got out. Ava stretched and blinked sleepily. Lena insisted on being carried, arms reaching instinctively toward her mother. But before Naomi could scoop her up, Jackson stepped forward. "May I?" he asked. Naomi hesitated. Just a flicker. Then nodded. He lifted Lena gently, settling her against his shoulder. She snuggled into his neck without hesitation. Naomi led them up the stairs to the second-floor unit. She unlocked the door, stepping into the small living room that doubled as a dining space and toy zone. A faded couch, a cracked coffee table covered in coloring books, and a corner kitchen with hand-me-down appliances. She turned on a soft lamp. The warm glow fell across a corkboard on the wall, filled with school flyers, electric bills, and a drawing of 3 stick figures under a smiling sundae. Naomi turned, suddenly self-conscious. "It's not much, but it's home." It's lived in," Jackson said with a soft smile. "That's a good thing." She managed to smile back. "Would you like some water?" "Sure." As she stepped into the kitchen, Jackson knelt beside the couch, helping Ava out of her shoes. She sat down, leaning her head on the armrest with a yawn. Lena was already dozing on his shoulder. Naomi returned with 2 glasses, handing one to him before sitting on the opposite end of the couch. "You're good with them," she said quietly. "I was an uncle once," he replied, his voice distant. "My sister had 2 boys. They're grown now. One's in Chicago, the other's in the Navy. What about you? Any kids of your own?" Jackson paused, then shook his head. "My wife and I. We tried. But life had other plans." There was a softness in his eyes, but also a shadow. Naomi didn't push. She passed 3 years ago. Ovarian cancer. It was fast. Naomi's breath caught. "I'm sorry." He nodded. "Thank you." Silence again, but not the awkward kind. The kind where 2 people quietly acknowledge pain and let it sit between them without trying to fix it. "I think that's what made tonight different," Jackson said after a moment. "I've been on a few dates since she passed, but it always felt forced. Like everyone was pretending they had it together. Like there was a scorecard." Naomi chuckled softly. "I definitely failed tonight's scorecard." He looked at her, firm but kind. "No, you showed me something real. Not perfect, not polished. Just real." She blinked, not used to hearing words like that from a man who wore a watch worth more than her car. "I almost didn't call," she admitted. "I was sitting in my car, the girls in the back, and I panicked. I thought, what's the point? You'd take one look and think I was a mess." Jackson tilted his head. "But I didn't." "No," she said softly. "You didn't." Lena stirred in his arms. Naomi stood, carefully lifting her daughter and carrying her into the bedroom. Jackson heard her whisper something sweet before pulling the door closed halfway. She returned and sat down, exhaling as if she'd just set down a boulder. "I feel like I've been holding my breath for 3 years," she said, "waiting for things to get easier, waiting for someone to tell me I'm doing okay, but it never comes." Jackson leaned forward, resting his forearms on his knees. "You're doing more than okay, Naomi." She looked at him, unsure how to accept that. "Most people would have broken by now. You've kept going." "I didn't have a choice." "You always have a choice. And you chose to fight. That matters." She didn't respond, but something shifted in her posture, a tiny uncoiling of the constant brace she held herself in. He glanced at the clock. It was nearing 10:30. "I should let you rest." Naomi stood with him, walking to the door. She hesitated before opening it. "Thank you," she said. "For dinner?" "For not looking away." Jackson looked at her, really looked, and nodded once. "You don't deserve to be invisible." He stepped outside, the night air wrapping around him again. As he walked to his car, Naomi watched from the doorway, arms folded, not from cold but from uncertainty. As Jackson reached the driver's side, Ava appeared beside her mother, rubbing her eyes. "Mommy," she mumbled, "is he going to come back?" Naomi looked out into the parking lot, where Jackson's car pulled slowly away, headlights fading into the dark. "I don't know," she whispered, but something in her voice said she hoped he would. The next morning arrived before Naomi felt ready for it. Dawn crept through the thin curtains of her bedroom, painting soft stripes of gold across the wall. She lay there for a moment, staring at the cracked ceiling, listening to the gentle breathing of her daughters in the next room. Sleep had been shallow, threaded with fragments of worry and replayed conversations. But it had also been threaded with something else, something she hadn't felt in a very long time. A small, steady warmth. She pushed herself out of bed quietly, careful not to wake the girls, and made her way to the tiny kitchen. The old tile was cold beneath her feet. She filled the kettle, turned it on, and leaned against the counter. And without warning, the memory of last night returned like a soft wave. Jackson holding Lena. Jackson helping Ava with her shoelaces. Jackson saying, "You don't deserve to be invisible." Her throat tightened. She picked up her phone. No messages. No missed calls. She wasn't sure if she had expected any. Maybe it was better this way. Last night was a kindness, a moment suspended between two people who didn't owe each other anything. And yet, "Mommy?" Ava's voice drifted in, small and sleepy. Naomi turned. Her daughter stood in the doorway, rubbing her eyes. "Morning, baby," she whispered, bending down to kiss her temple. "Did you sleep okay?" Ava nodded. "Did Mr. Jackson go home?" "Yes, sweetheart." "Is he coming back?" Naomi's breath caught. She forced a gentle smile. "I don't know." "Well." Ava thought about that for a long moment, then simply whispered, "He was nice." "He was," Naomi said softly. "Very." She served the girls cereal, packed their school bags, and hurried them through their morning routine. While brushing Ava's hair, she paused for a moment, remembering the way Jackson had looked at her daughter with respect, not pity, respect. "Mommy?" Ava asked again, breaking her thoughts. "Can I draw him something?" Naomi blinked. "Draw who?" "Mr. Jackson," Ava said simply, as if it were obvious. "I want to say thank you." Naomi opened her mouth to protest, then closed it again. Ava's drawings were always her way of giving love, her way of claiming the world around her. "Okay," Naomi said quietly. "You can draw him something." By the time they reached the school drop-off line, Ava had created a new picture, a little girl holding hands with a tall man. A Sunday. A dog. Even though they didn't have one. "Maybe he likes dogs," Ava said matter-of-factly. Naomi didn't argue. She kissed her daughters goodbye and watched them disappear into the building. Then she sat in the driver's seat of her old SUV, staring at the steering wheel. She should go to work, should talk to the clinic again, should fight for the paycheck she deserved. But she was exhausted from fighting. Instead, she drove to Harborview Park and parked beneath a willow tree, its long branches swaying gently in the early breeze. She rested her head against the seat and closed her eyes. She didn't expect her phone to buzz. When it did, she jolted upright. Unknown number. Her heart raced. She answered cautiously, "Hello? It's Jackson." For a moment, she forgot how to breathe. "Oh," she said softly. "Hi. Is this a bad time?" His voice was steady, warm, grounded. "No," she whispered. "It's fine. I wasn't sure if I should call," he admitted. "I don't want to intrude." You're not," she said quickly, then quietly regretted how quickly she had said it. "Last night," Jackson continued, "I meant what I said. You handled an impossible day. Most people would have shut down. You kept going." "I didn't feel strong," she murmured. "Strength doesn't always feel like strength," he replied. "Sometimes it feels like survival." Her eyes stung again. They talked for a moment, nothing heavy. He asked about Ava and Lena. She asked about his morning meetings. It felt effortless. Finally he said, "I was wondering if you'd like to have dinner again. Somewhere easy. Somewhere the girls would like." Naomi swallowed. Jackson, I can't afford to." "I didn't ask you to pay," he said gently. "That's not the point," she whispered. He paused. "Then tell me what is." She looked out across the park, at the sunlight glimmering on the water. "I'm tired of being someone people feel sorry for. I'm tired of always being the burden." You aren't a burden," he said immediately. "You don't know me," she said, her voice cracking. "You don't know how messy my life is, how close I am to losing everything." "Naomi," he said softly, "I don't care about perfect. I told you that." Tears slid down her cheeks. He continued, voice lower now, steady as steel. "You're not someone I pity. You're someone I admire." She covered her mouth with her hand, shaking. "If dinner feels like too much," he added, "I'll accept that. But I'd like to see you again." even if it's just a walk, or coffee, or nothing fancy at all. Naomi couldn't speak. Take your time, he murmured. Whatever you choose, it's your choice. Before she could respond, a shadow passed across her window. Someone was approaching her car. She looked up and gasped. Mommy, Ava's voice called, followed by Lena's. Naomi blinked. What are you girls? The school bus had gotten a flat tire on its route, and the driver had brought the kids back. A staff member waved from the sidewalk. We're running half an hour late. They'll head out again soon. The girls climbed into the SUV happily, unaware of her emotional state. Jackson, still on the phone, heard the commotion. They're with you? He asked. Yes, she said, trying to steady her breathing. Then I'll let you go, he said. But think about what I said. I will, she whispered. And Naomi? Yes? You deserve good things, even if you don't believe it yet. Now, her heart folded inward. When the call ended, Ava leaned forward. Mommy, can we see Mr. Jackson today? Naomi wiped her tears discreetly. I don't know, sweetheart. He helped you, Ava said, as if explaining something obvious. People who help you are supposed to come back. Naomi swallowed hard, staring through the windshield. Maybe, she whispered. Maybe. Jackson stood outside the Lemon Tree Diner just after 6, a paper bag in his hand and doubt flickering quietly behind his eyes. He'd been staring at the sky for the last 5 minutes, watching it slide from pink to purple, wondering if he was doing too much or not enough. He'd sent the text 2 hours ago. Got a booth by the window. No pressure. Fries are on standby. No reply. Now, he wasn't sure if he should stay or head back to his penthouse. The thought of his oversized condo, cold and sleek and filled with silence, didn't bring the usual comfort. Lately, it felt more like a museum of what he used to have a life curated but never lived. He sighed and stepped inside. The smell of bacon and old coffee hugged him like a familiar jacket. A waitress waved from behind the counter. Your girls joining you tonight? She asked with a wink. Jackson gave a half smile. We'll see. He took a booth by the window, the same one from the night before. 2 kids' menus were already laid out, crayons in a paper cup between the napkin holder and the sugar packets. He hadn't asked for them. The staff had remembered. He sipped his coffee slowly, watching the door each time it opened. 10 minutes passed. Then, 15. A family of 4 sat 2 booths down. A pair of retired men talked politics at the counter. Still, no Naomi. Until the bell above the door jingled. Jackson looked up. There she was. Naomi stood just inside the diner entrance. Her hair pulled back in a simple braid. A clean white blouse tucked into dark jeans. And a quiet look of hesitation painted across her face. Ava and Lena clung to her hands, both dressed in second-hand dresses that had clearly been picked with pride. She spotted him, and something flickered across her expression. Relief, maybe, or just confirmation that he hadn't changed his mind. Jackson stood up. You came, he said. I wasn't sure I would, she replied honestly. But you did. She gave him a small nod, then looked down at her daughters. Say hello, girls. Hi, Mr. Jackson, Ava beamed, waving with both hands. Lena whispered a shy hi and immediately reached for the crayons. Jackson bent down to their level. I saved the corner seat just for you two. It has the best view of the jukebox. The girls scrambled into the booth without protest. Naomi slid in last, folding her hands tightly in her lap. I wasn't sure this was a good idea, she said quietly, once the kids were occupied with coloring. It doesn't have to be anything, Jackson said. It's just dinner. Naomi looked at him. It never feels like just anything when you're involved. He raised an eyebrow. Because of the money? Because of everything. He didn't reply right away. Instead, he reached into the paper bag beside him and pulled out something wrapped in napkin. He placed it in front of Naomi. She unwrapped it slowly. It was Ava's drawing. I figured you might want this back, he said, but I made a copy. Naomi blinked, caught off guard. You made a copy? He shrugged, half smiling. It's on my fridge. She looked down at the drawing. Stick figures holding hands under a yellow sundae. The man in the drawing had a blue tie. Jackson was pretty sure Ava had added that detail later. She said you like dogs, Naomi murmured, gesturing to the scribbled animal in the corner. Jackson chuckled. I do now. They ordered food burgers, fries, chocolate milk for the kids, coffee for the adults. As the meal went on, the tension slowly unraveled. The girls laughed freely. Ava told Jackson about her spelling test, while Lena explained why unicorns were basically real. Ugh. Jackson listened as if their words mattered more than stock portfolios and private equity mergers. Naomi watched him watching them. Her daughters weren't usually this open with strangers, but something about Jackson, his calm, his attentiveness seemed to settle them. "You're good at this," she said quietly as Ava talked his ear off. "I've had some practice," he replied. "Not as much as I would have liked, but enough." Naomi hesitated. "You said your wife? You tried to have children?" He nodded. "Miscarriages. 2. Then the diagnosis came. After that, we stopped trying." "I'm sorry," she said, meaning it. He looked at her, eyes steady. "I think if she could see me tonight, she'd smile." Naomi felt a lump in her throat. As the kids finished their milkshakes, the waitress returned with the check. Jackson reached for it. Naomi caught his hand gently. "Let me leave the tip," she said. "You don't have to." "I know. I want to." He paused, then nodded, letting her place a few crumpled bills beside the receipt. It wasn't much, but it was dignity, and he respected that. Outside, the air had cooled. Jackson walked them to their car. "Thank you," Naomi said as she buckled Lena into her booster seat. "For dinner?" "For being kind." He looked at her. "You deserve kindness, Naomi. That's not charity. That's just fact." Ava, now buckled in, leaned over and whispered something in her mother's ear. Naomi laughed, shaking her head. "What is it?" Jackson asked. Naomi smiled, a little embarrassed. She said, "Next time, we should invite you to our house, so you can try my mac and cheese." Jackson's smile widened. "Well, if it's anything like the drawing, I think I'd like it very much." Naomi closed the car door and turned to face him. For a moment, neither of them moved. "Good night, Jackson," she said. "Good night, Naomi." She climbed into the car. He watched as her headlights disappeared around the corner. He didn't know what this was, but it wasn't nothing. And for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like a man standing alone in a crowd. The week rolled by slowly, as if life itself were tiptoeing, unsure whether to return to its usual routine or lean into something new. Naomi returned to work, alternating between exhausted shifts at the clinic and evening cleanup jobs at a nearby senior center. The pay was meager, the hours long, but the bills didn't wait. What did change, however, was the sound of her phone buzzing each night. Not with emergencies, not with overdue notices, but with Jackson. Sometimes it was just a simple message. "How was Ava's spelling test?" Or, "Tell Lena the diner has strawberry pancakes ready whenever she is." Other times, it was a photo, a book cover he thought she'd like, a silly quote from a children's menu he found on a business trip, even a snapshot of a puppy that reminded him of Ava's drawing. Naomi hadn't realized how deeply she craved that kind of attention. Gentle, steady, without pressure. But it scared her, too. Kindness wasn't always permanent, and she'd learned, over and over, that it came with expiration dates. By Thursday night, she sat at her small kitchen table, laptop open, reviewing her application for an RN scholarship she'd been too afraid to submit for the last 2 years. Ava and Lena were asleep. The apartment was quiet except for the gentle creak of the old ceiling fan. Her phone buzzed again. "Jackson." "Hey, I know it's late. Just landed back in town. If you're free this weekend, I'd love to see you and the girls again. No pressure." She stared at the screen. It wasn't the invitation that shook her, it was the ease in his tone. Like this wasn't complicated. Like she wasn't complicated. She typed, deleted, typed again. Finally, "Saturday evening? The girls would like that." He replied within a minute, "So would I." She closed the laptop and exhaled. The wall around her heart hadn't fallen, but a brick or two had quietly been removed. Saturday came with sunlight and chaos. Naomi cleaned the apartment, washed the girls' favorite dresses, braided Ava's hair while Lena insisted on wearing butterfly clips. The excitement in their voices was uncontainable. "Will Mr. Jackson bring a dog this time?" Lena asked, fully believing her drawing had manifested one into existence. "No, baby," Naomi chuckled, "but maybe he'll tell you about the one from his photo." Ava was more practical. Can I give him my new drawing? Of course, Naomi said, swallowing the strange knot in her throat. She'd never introduced a man to her children like this, not as a friend, not as anything. They'd never seen her care about someone the way she caught herself caring about Jackson. At 5 p.m. he knocked. Not rang the buzzer. Not called from the car. He knocked. Naomi opened the door to find him standing there in a navy blue sweater and dark jeans, holding a paper bag in one hand and a small bouquet of daisies in the other. For you, he said, handing her the flowers. Naomi blinked. You didn't have to. I wanted to, he interrupted gently. The girls in the office said daisies are underrated. She smiled despite herself. They were right. Ava appeared behind her. Mr. Jackson, Miss Ava, he said with a mock bow. Lena squealed from the living room, running toward him. Did you bring the dog? Jackson laughed. Not this time. But I brought cookies. Naomi raised an eyebrow. You really are playing the long game, huh? I've learned, he said, that winning over the gatekeepers is key. They sat around the table, Naomi's small, wobbly table with a chipped corner and two mismatched chairs. Jackson didn't bat an eye. They shared dinner, Naomi's famous mac and cheese, baked with love and more cheddar than most recipes dared call for. He had seconds. Then, thirds. Okay, he said, patting his stomach. This officially trumps anything I've ever been served at a 5-star restaurant. Ava giggled. Lena handed him her drawing. A stick figure family. This time including a house and a dog. Naomi noticed that the man now had salt and pepper hair. After the girls were tucked in, stories read, stuffed animals arranged just right. Naomi returned to the living room to find Jackson still sitting at the table, looking around the apartment with a thoughtful expression. What is it? She asked, drying her hands on a dish towel. He turned to her. I was just thinking, I like this place. She looked around at the worn rug, the peeling paint near the baseboards. Really? It's warm, he said. Not because of the thermostat, because of you. She sat down across from him, quiet now. Can I ask you something? She said. Anything. Why are you here, Jackson? Really here? This isn't your world. He didn't hesitate. It could be. She looked at him, eyes cautious. You don't know what it's like to always be behind on rent. To wake up in the middle of the night wondering if your kids will grow up thinking you weren't enough. To work a double shift with blisters on your feet and still feel like you failed everyone. No, he said slowly. I don't know that exact pain. But I do know what it's like to have everything and still feel empty. To go home to silence. To feel like the world forgot you. The minute the spotlight faded, Naomi swallowed hard. I lost my wife, he continued. And for a long time, I thought that meant I'd lost the right to love again. But the truth is, I didn't stop wanting connection. I just stopped believing I deserved it. Her voice cracked. You really think someone like me could fit into someone like your life? No, he said softly. I think someone like me has finally found something worth fitting into. The silence that followed was thick with meaning. She looked away, eyes glistening. There's a wall, she whispered, around me. It's not personal. It's just survival. Jackson leaned forward. I'm not here to break it down, he said. I'm here to wait until you open the door yourself. Nah. And somehow, Naomi believed him. Sunday morning arrived with soft light and the smell of maple syrup. Naomi stood at the stove flipping pancakes, wearing an apron her late grandmother had sewn decades ago. The stitches were crooked, the fabric faded, but it held warmth in a way no new garment ever could. The girls were already up, Ava reading aloud from a picture book on the couch while Lena twirled in a tutu that had seen better days. Naomi smiled to herself, thinking of the night before, of Jackson's voice, low and steady, saying he'd wait for her to open the door. Not push, not pull, just wait. She didn't know how to describe what that meant, not yet, but her chest felt a little less tight this morning. By mid-afternoon, the girls were knee-deep in construction paper and markers. Ava, in particular, was hard at work, her tongue poking out in concentration. Naomi, folding laundry on the couch, glanced over. What are you making, honey? A picture, Ava said simply. For Mr. Jackson. Naomi paused. Oh? Ava held it up. This time, it was different, more detailed. The stick figures had names above their heads. Mommy, me, Lena, and Mr. Jackson. There was a sun in the corner, and a house with smoke curling out of the chimney. But what stopped Naomi was the tree in the drawing. Underneath it, Jackson held Ava's hand, and Lena was on his shoulders. He's smiling, Ava said proudly. I made him smiling. Naomi's throat tightened. That's beautiful, baby. Do you think he'll like it? Naomi nodded, heart aching in a way she didn't know how to explain. I think he'll love it. Jackson arrived that evening with two things in hand: a bag of fresh peaches from a roadside stand he passed on the way over, and a copy of Charlotte's Web for the girls. They should have their own library, he said simply. Naomi watched as the girls tackled him with unrestrained joy. Ava wasted no time showing him the new drawing, beaming as she explained each little detail. Jackson bent down to examine it carefully, like it was a priceless painting. This is me? He asked, pointing to the tall stick figure with the salt and pepper hair. Ava nodded. And you're smiling. 'Cause you're happy. He looked up at Naomi for a second. I think you got that right. Lena tugged his sleeve. That's me on your shoulders. Jackson laughed. I need to start lifting weights. The girls giggled and dragged him to the living room. Naomi stood in the kitchen, pouring iced tea, listening to their laughter echo through the small space. It was startling how natural it felt. Not like a guest had arrived, but like someone who belonged. When Naomi finally joined them, Jackson looked up. You okay? She sat beside him, her shoulder barely brushing his. You're good with them. They make it easy, he said. They watched as Ava read a page aloud from Charlotte's Web, stumbling slightly over the word, salutations. Jackson gently corrected her without making it a lesson. Naomi saw the way Ava beamed at the praise. Later, after the girls were asleep, Naomi and Jackson sat on the small porch just outside her door. She handed him a glass of tea, and they watched the sunset paint Charleston's sky in soft pinks and oranges. You seem different tonight, he said. Naomi rested her arms on her knees. I don't know. Maybe I'm tired of being afraid. Afraid of what? Of letting them love someone who might leave. He didn't respond immediately. Instead, he looked out at the horizon. I get that. She looked at him. Do you? He nodded slowly. My wife's illness, it happened fast. But the emotional distance started long before the diagnosis. We were both scared to admit we were growing apart. And then, when the diagnosis came, we clung to the version of us we thought we were supposed to be. It took her dying for me to realize how much I'd already lost. Naomi looked away, eyes brimming. I'm sorry. He reached over, not touching her, but close enough that she could feel the warmth of his presence. So when I say I'm here, I mean it. I'm not perfect. I won't always have the right words, but I won't vanish. She nodded slowly. You're saying all the things I didn't know I needed to hear. I'm not saying them for effect, Naomi. I'm saying them because they're true. She didn't answer, but she didn't look away either. Ava's drawing sat on the side table between them. Jackson reached for it, folding it carefully and slipping it into the inside pocket of his jacket like a keepsake. Naomi raised an eyebrow. You're collecting them now? They're better than stocks, he said with a half smile. Way more valuable. Naomi let out a laugh, soft, genuine. She hadn't realized how much she missed laughing without guilt. I'm scared, she admitted. Even now I'm scared. Me too, Jackson said. But I've learned something. What's that? That sometimes the best things begin with two people choosing to show up, even if neither of them knows how the story ends. She looked at him, and for the first time, didn't feel like she was looking through a wall, just a window one she might someday open. The next few weeks unfolded not like a whirlwind, but like a steady, calming tide. Jackson didn't show up every day, but when he did, it mattered. And when he didn't, he checked in. No long speeches, no pressure, just presence. Naomi didn't know what to call it yet. It wasn't dating in the way most people understood it. There were no grand romantic declarations, no candlelit kisses or late-night texts filled with flirtation, but there was something else, something rarer. Consistency. He came to Ava's school art show with flowers wrapped in newspaper. He carried Lena on his shoulders through the Saturday farmers market. letting her pick out peaches like a VIP produced consultant. He sat with Naomi on the porch after the girls were asleep, talking about books, memories, regrets, and laughter they thought they'd forgotten how to feel. Naomi, who once clutched her privacy like a life vest, found herself telling Jackson stories she hadn't even shared with her own family. How she used to write poetry. How she once dreamed of opening a clinic for underserved women. How sometimes, when the girls were asleep and the house was quiet, she cried without knowing why. Jackson listened like every word mattered. And perhaps that, more than anything, is what unraveled her slowly guarded heart. It was on a particularly warm Friday evening that Naomi noticed the shift not in Jackson, but in herself. They were walking through a quiet neighborhood block party hosted by one of her neighbors. Kids ran wild between balloon stands and folding tables stacked with plastic cutlery and potato salad. Someone grilled ribs on a rusted smoker. Music from the 70 seconds pulsed through a cheap speaker someone had duct taped to a tree. Naomi had almost declined the invitation. Too many eyes, she'd said. Too many questions. But Ava had begged. They'll have face painting, she'd squealed. And lemonade. So Naomi said yes. And when Jackson offered to tag along, she hesitated only a moment before saying, "Fine, but don't let them rope you into the sack race." Now they stood near a lemonade cooler, Jackson holding 2 cups while Ava and Lena zoomed past them in pursuit of a kid with a bubble wand. Naomi sipped from her drink. "You sure this is your scene, Mr. Billionaire?" He gave her a sideways glance. "You think I can't handle balloon animals and lukewarm beans? I think you wore loafers to a party with sidewalk chalk." He looked down at his shoes, then at the dusty pavement. "You may have a point." She grinned. Then she noticed 2 women near the table watching them whispering, glancing at Jackson with curiosity and just enough judgment to make Naomi's stomach twist. She looked away quickly, the smile falling from her lips. Jackson noticed. "What just happened?" he asked, lowering his voice. "Nothing. Naomi," she sighed. "Some people around here, they don't understand." "Understand what?" "Why someone like you is here, with someone like me, in a neighborhood like this." Jackson was quiet for a moment. "Do you understand why I'm here?" he asked. Naomi met his eyes. "Sometimes, and sometimes it scares me." He nodded. "It scares me too, not because I doubt it, but because it matters." Ugh. She looked away, her voice suddenly fragile. "You don't get followed around a grocery store. You don't get side-eyed at the school pickup line." "No," he said honestly, "I don't." She tightened her grip on the cup. "I know this won't be easy for you. You're used to private jets and silence. This is noise, and judgment, and mess." He looked around at the chaos, the kids shouting, the smell of barbecue, the cracked pavement, the balloons tangled in tree limbs. "I like noise," he said, "and I like your mess." Naomi blinked. "I didn't come here for easy," Jackson added. "I came here because I see you, and because the world doesn't get to decide what belongs together. We do." Naomi stared at him, stunned by the simplicity of that truth. Just then, Ava ran back, her cheeks painted like a cat. "Mr. Jackson, come see my whiskers." He grinned. "Lead the way, Miss Cat." She dragged him off. Naomi watched as he crouched down beside Lena, who proudly showed him her glittered balloon sword. His laughter rang out, open and real, and something in Naomi softened. Later that night, after the girls had been tucked in and the leftover lemonade poured down the sink, Naomi stood at the kitchen window, watching Jackson load a folding chair into his trunk. He didn't have to stay for the whole event, but he had, and when he stepped back inside, wiping his hands with a napkin, she said the words she hadn't let herself say before. "Thank you. For making them feel like they're not a burden." He froze, then walked closer. "They're not. I know, but I've spent so long carrying everything alone that I forgot what it feels like when someone else lifts even a little." Jackson looked at her for a long, quiet moment. "I'm not here to rescue you," he said. "I'm here to walk beside you, if that's what you want." She didn't reply right away, but she reached out and touched his arm just lightly. "Just enough." "That's what I want," she said. And Jackson, who had once built an empire to protect himself from feeling anything at all, realized he had never been more certain. Monday rolled in with overcast skies and a thick humidity that clung to Charleston like an unwanted hug. Naomi stood behind the reception desk at the clinic, glancing occasionally at the cracked clock on the wall and the phone in her pocket. She wasn't expecting Jackson to call, but her fingers still itched to check. It had been 2 days since the block party, since she'd stood under strings of mismatched lights, surrounded by cheap barbecue smoke and gospel music, and told Jackson she wanted him beside her. He hadn't rushed her. He never did. But his eyes that night, they had said everything she hadn't found the words for. Now, back in the cold buzz of fluorescent lights and the hum of an overworked printer, Naomi felt the contrast like a weight. The clinic was running behind. The other receptionist had called out sick. Again, and Mr. Halberd, her supervisor, had made 3 passive-aggressive comments about people who let their personal lives interfere with their shifts. Still, she held her ground. She didn't snap, didn't shrink. Not today. At 3:45 p.m., her phone buzzed just once. Jackson. Diner. 6:30. Pancakes and coloring contests. You in? She stared at the screen for a long second before typing back. We're in. The girls practically flew into their dresses that evening. Ava insisted on bringing a new drawing this time. A scene of all 4 of them on a roller coaster. Lena wore her sparkly sandals, even though they squeaked with every step. By 6:25, they were sliding into their usual booth by the window at the Lemon Tree Diner. Jackson was already there. A coloring book opened in front of him, and a plate of fries already ordered. You're early, Naomi teased. I'm not risking losing the best booth, he said. This is prime real estate. The girls dove into the coloring pages, Lena narrating each crayon choice like a sports announcer. Jackson slid a small box across the table toward Naomi. She raised an eyebrow. What's this? Just open it. She did, and inside, nestled in tissue paper, was a keychain. A simple metal tag, engraved with 4 stick figures and a tiny house under a sundae. Her breath caught. It's your daughter's drawing, he said quietly. I had it made. Hope that's okay. Naomi blinked back, a sudden sting in her eyes. You turned Ava's picture into a keychain? She made it a family. I thought it deserved to be carried. Naomi didn't speak. Couldn't. For a moment. Jackson didn't press. He just handed her a napkin from the dispenser. Later, as they waited for dessert banana cream pie for Jackson, chocolate milkshakes for the girls, Naomi leaned in, lowering her voice. I've been meaning to ask you something. Shoot. Why did you stay? That night I canceled. You could have left the second you saw me crying in the parking lot. Jackson looked at her, his expression shifting from ease to something heavier. I've asked myself that too, he admitted. I don't think there's a neat answer. But I'll tell you what I remember. Naomi listened. I remember sitting in that restaurant, wondering why I even said yes to a blind date. I remember feeling foolish for hoping something good might come out of it. And then I saw you folded in on yourself, holding 2 girls who looked at you like you were their whole world. He paused. And in that moment, I didn't see a cancellation. I saw a woman trying her hardest, doing everything she could with what she had. And something in me just stopped. Naomi's fingers tightened around the cup in her hands. I stayed, Jackson continued, because I couldn't walk away from that kind of courage. The silence between them was deep, not awkward. Ava, blissfully unaware, showed Lena how to fold a napkin into a heart. Naomi looked at him. Really looked. I've never had someone choose me when I was messy, she said. It's always been when I'm smiling, dressed up, holding it together. Then maybe it's time someone chose you when you're exactly who you are. She couldn't answer, but she reached across the table and placed her hand over his. Not to start something, but to anchor it. Outside, the night had begun to settle. The street lamps flickered to life, casting a soft glow over the sidewalk as Naomi loaded the girls into their car seats. Jackson helped Lena with her seatbelt, tickling her belly just enough to make her giggle. As Naomi closed the back door, she turned to him. I meant it, she said. I don't know what this is yet, but I don't want to push it away. He nodded once. Neither do I. He stepped back as she climbed into the car, but before she started the engine, Ava rolled down her window. Mr. Jackson? He bent slightly to her level. Yes, ma'am? Ava held up a folded piece of paper. You forgot your roller coaster picture. He took it carefully. Thank you. I'll put it next to the others. She smiled. You're gonna need a bigger fridge. Jackson chuckled. Good problem to have. As they drove off, Naomi glanced at him in the rearview mirror, still standing under the diner lights. Her daughter's artwork clutched like treasure in his hand, and for the first time in years, she didn't feel like life was slipping through her fingers. It was beginning to feel like maybe, just maybe, she was allowed to hold on. The following morning, Naomi awoke not to the usual sound of her alarm, but to the soft giggles of her daughters. She lay still for a moment, listening Ava whispering something about Mr. Jackson's fridge, and Lena responding with a sleepy laugh. She smiled. It was a subtle thing, almost unfamiliar, to wake up and feel the morning press against her skin, not with dread, but with warmth. After the chaos of cereal, mismatched socks, and a last-minute hunt for a library book, Naomi dropped the girls off at school and returned to a quiet apartment. She poured herself a cup of lukewarm coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and stared at the small pile of drawings pinned to the corkboard Jackson's keychain replica now hanging just below them. She let the stillness wash over her. Not loneliness, stillness. It felt like breathing for the first time after holding her breath too long. Then her phone rang. She hesitated when she saw the number, her supervisor at the clinic. A part of her, instinctively, wanted to ignore it. But she answered. Naomi. Mr. Halberd's voice snapped through the speaker, clipped and impatient. I need you to come in early tomorrow. I have coverage scheduled for the afternoon, she replied calmly. Well, things have changed. I need coverage in the morning. Brenda's out again. Naomi took a breath. I understand, but I have a commitment. Silence. A commitment? He repeated, as if she'd said something obscene. Yes, she said more firmly. My daughter's class has a parent reader program. I signed up weeks ago. Halberd scoffed. This is why you're not full-time material. You let your personal life interfere with real work. Naomi stood. Her voice didn't rise, but it didn't waver either. My personal life is why I work 2 jobs to begin with. I'm a mother. I don't apologize for that. He didn't respond. She added, if you need me after noon, I'll be there. Otherwise, I suggest you ask Sandra to adjust. She hung up before he could retaliate. Her hands shook slightly as she set the phone down. But for the first time, she didn't feel like she was shrinking. She was taking up space. That afternoon, as promised, she sat in a tiny blue plastic chair in Ava's second-grade classroom, reading Where the Wild Things Are to a circle of giggling, squirming kids. Ava sat in front, grinning up at her as if she were made of stars. Naomi closed the book to a round of applause. The teacher clapped too, nodding with approval. You're a natural, she said. Naomi laughed. I think I missed my calling. Outside the school, Jackson was waiting just like he said he would. His car idled across the street, and as soon as Ava spotted him, she waved like he was a returning war hero. Naomi walked over with her daughter's hand in hers. You didn't have to pick me up, she said. I wanted to, he said simply. He opened the passenger door for her, then handed Ava a small paper bag through the back window. What's this? Ava asked. 3 cookies, Jackson said. 1 for you, 1 for your sister, 1 to share with whoever was the best listener in class today. Ava lit up. That's easy. Mommy wins. Naomi laughed and climbed into the front seat. I'll take my prize with tea. Please. Jackson smiled. Deal. They spent the rest of the afternoon together. No plan, no structure, just a long, lazy walk through Battery Park, letting Lena chase squirrels and Ava count mossy stones. Jackson held Naomi's hand once. Just once. She didn't pull away. They sat on a bench near the water, the breeze carrying salt and honeysuckle. Naomi leaned against his shoulder while the girls climbed a nearby oak. Everything okay today? Jackson asked gently. She nodded. It is now. You sure? Naomi hesitated. I stood up to my boss this morning. Jackson looked at her. Good. I didn't back down, she added, her voice stronger now. I didn't fold like I usually do. Because you're strong, she smiled. Because I'm learning. They sat in silence, watching the sun dip lower in the sky. Lena returned first, her hands full of leaves. Ava followed, cheeks flushed, her hair coming loose. Naomi reached up to fix her braid, brushing a thumb over her temple. Jackson watched the moment unfold like it was something sacred. I think, he said quietly, this is the first time in years I've felt like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Naomi turned to him. I'm still scared, she said. I know, but I want to try. I'm not going anywhere, he said. She looked down at the girls laughing now, chasing each other with sticks like miniature warriors. I think they believe you already. He smiled. Then I'd better keep proving them right. Then, Naomi leaned her head against his shoulder again, just for a moment. For once, she didn't have to hold everything together. She could simply be. And that was more than she ever thought she'd be allowed to hope for. The rhythm they'd fallen into was delicate like a song played on old piano keys, slightly imperfect, but beautiful because of it. Naomi knew better than to trust peace fully, not after everything life had taught her. Still, she let herself enjoy the quiet days, the laughter, the routine of knowing someone had her back without asking for anything in return. That week, Naomi had 3 shifts at the clinic, a late-night cleaning job, and a short shift at the senior center. Jackson, in his world of contracts and foundations, managed to text her every evening like clockwork, even if it was just, "You breathing?" Or, "Tell Ava her drawing made my conference room wall." It wasn't love, not yet, but it was something softer, real, something growing in the spaces life had once burned down. Then came the knock. It was Friday afternoon. The girls were coloring on the floor, and Naomi was stirring a pot of beans on the stove, her mind far away in the dance between bills and weekend schedules. The knock startled her, not Jackson. He always texted before arriving. This knock was sharp, rushed. She opened the door and froze. Loren, the woman at the threshold, was dressed in black, heels clicking on the warped wood. Her makeup was precise, her blonde hair coiled in that expensive, time-consuming way Naomi had only ever seen in magazines. And her eyes, cold, measured, scanned the apartment behind Naomi before settling on her again. "Naomi James?" the woman asked, though clearly she already knew. "Yes," Naomi said slowly. "I'm Lauren Whitaker, Jackson's ex-wife." Naomi's mouth went dry. Her heart beat once, loud and hard. "I'm sorry to drop in like this," Lauren continued, brushing an invisible fleck from her sleeve. "But I think it's time you and I had a little chat." Naomi blinked, instinctively stepping out to block the doorway, shielding the girls behind her. "I'm not sure what you think." Loren smiled without warmth. "Oh, don't worry. I'm not here to cause a scene. I just wanted to meet the woman who's suddenly showing up in boardroom rumors and school drop-off chatter." "You've made quite the splash." Naomi stiffened. "If you came here to threaten me..." "Threaten you?" Lauren chuckled. "Sweetheart, no. I came to remind you." "Of what?" "Of the distance between his world and yours." The words landed like ice water. Loren stepped closer. "I know Jackson. Better than you ever will. He's kind. Yes. But he's also impulsive. Generous to a fault. He dives headfirst into these savior fantasies until reality knocks him back into place." Naomi held her ground. "You're not his reality anymore." Loren's eyes flared, just for a moment, then cooled. "And you think you are?" she asked, her voice velveted in poison. "You think a few shared meals and bedtime stories make you permanent?" Naomi didn't answer. "I've seen it before," Loren said softly. "Jackson needs a project, something to throw himself into between deals. Between grief and guilt. Right now, that's you. And when it stops being convenient, he'll walk. He always does." Naomi's hand clenched the edge of the door. "You're wasting your time," she said. "You don't know me." "I know enough," Loren said, already turning. "And I know you'll thank me for this later, after the dust settles." She walked down the steps like she owned them. Naomi stood in the doorway long after she'd gone. That night, she didn't respond to Jackson's text. She bathed the girls, read them stories, tucked them in with her heart dragging like an anchor behind her. She didn't tell them about the visit. She didn't tell anyone. But in her chest, the old voice began to whisper again. "See? You never belonged. You just forgot for a while." The next morning, Jackson arrived at the door with bagels and fresh flowers. Naomi hesitated before opening it. "Hey," he said, holding up the bag. "I brought bribes." She tried to smile. "You didn't need to." He stopped, looked at her carefully. What's wrong? She stepped outside, closed the door gently behind her. The girls were still asleep. Loren came by yesterday, she said. Jackson's smile vanished. She said things, Naomi continued, about you, about me. Naomi, she thinks I'm just your project. His jaw clenched. That's not true. But it has been before? She asked, her voice quiet. He exhaled. Yes. Once. Maybe twice. I tried to fix things. People. Situations. Because I thought that was love. But it wasn't. It was guilt in a tuxedo. And me? She asked. You're not broken, he said immediately. You don't need fixing. But I'm still the woman with overdue rent and 2 kids coloring on the floor. Jackson stepped closer. And I'm still the man with more money than peace. Maybe we're both starting over. She didn't look convinced. He added, Loren was right about one thing. I am impulsive. I do dive in. But this, he gestured between them, this isn't impulse. This is a choice I keep making, day after day. Naomi looked at him, her voice barely above a whisper. And if I can't believe that yet, then I'll keep showing up, he said, until you do. She nodded slowly, but her heart still carried the sting. She didn't push him away, but she didn't invite him in. Not yet. Inside, Ava stirred. Was that Mr. Jackson? She asked sleepily from the hallway. Naomi swallowed the lump in her throat. Yeah, baby. He brought bagels. Ava rubbed her eyes. Can I go hug him? Naomi paused, then nodded. Yeah, go ahead. She watched as Ava opened the door and ran into his arms like it was the safest place in the world. Naomi stood in the doorway again like she had when this all began. And now, more than ever, she wondered, was she ready to believe this was real? Naomi didn't sleep much that weekend. Even with Jackson's words still echoing in her ears steady, unwavering. I'll keep showing up until you do. The doubt clung to her like humidity in a Charleston summer. It wasn't just Loren's visit. It was everything Loren represented. The world Naomi had never been invited into, never believed she could survive in. By Monday, she found herself watching Jackson more closely, not to catch him in a lie, but to study the truth of him. The way he leaned down to tie Lena's shoe, without prompting. How he talked to Ava like her opinions mattered. How he listened when Naomi vented about her boss, her exhaustion, or her fear of the school cutting aftercare again. He never rushed to solve, just stayed. That, more than anything, unnerved her. She'd grown used to temporary kindness, friendly nurses who forgot her name a week later, boyfriends who turned sour the moment her reality showed. But Jackson, he kept coming back. Still, her guard hadn't lowered completely. Not yet. On Wednesday, Jackson invited them all to dinner at a quiet Italian restaurant tucked off King Street. Not flashy, not loud, just warm light, soft music, and linen napkins folded with care. Naomi hesitated. Are you sure this is okay? She asked as they walked in. We don't exactly blend in here. You blend in better than half the folks I've eaten with, Jackson replied. Besides, Lena said she wanted spaghetti that twirls. I deliver on my promises. The girls behaved like tiny angels through dinner, mostly because Jackson had sneakily bribed them with the promise of cannoli if they stayed seated and used indoor voices. Halfway through the meal, an older white couple approached their table. Naomi tensed, instinct kicking in before her brain could catch up. Jackson, the man said, beaming, didn't expect to see you here. Jackson stood and shook his hand. Elliot, good to see you. This is Naomi, and these are her girls Ava and Lena. Myson, Elliot smiled, nodding politely at Naomi, though his eyes flicked toward the girls with something unreadable. His wife gave a similar tight-lipped smile before looping her arm through her husband's. Well, enjoy your dinner, she said. Looks like you've got your hands full. The tone was light, but the message, clear. As they walked away, Naomi didn't move. Don't, Jackson said quietly, already reading her expression. Don't let them undo anything. They looked at us like we were a charity case, she muttered. No, he said firmly. They looked at us like we were unexpected. That's their limitation, not ours. Naomi swallowed the sting. It's hard not to feel like I don't belong in your world. Naomi, he said, setting down his fork. What if this is your world too? You're judging yourself by rules you didn't write. By people who never knew you. She stared at him. He added gently, "You belong where you're valued. That's not charity. That's truth." Ava, sensing the tension, passed Naomi her drawing from earlier, a picture of all four of them at a table, Jackson in a tie, Naomi with a flower in her hair. "We're fancy tonight," she said. Naomi laughed despite herself, blinking away tears. "We are, baby." Later, as Jackson walked them to their car, Lena clung to his leg. "Don't go," she murmured. He knelt beside her. "I'll see you tomorrow, little star. Promise?" He touched her cheek. "Always." Naomi watched them, heart full and sore at once. As she drove home, Ava spoke from the back seat. "Mommy?" "Yes, sweetie. Are we gonna keep Mr. Jackson?" Naomi smiled at the innocence of the question. "I don't know," she said honestly. Ava was quiet for a beat. "I hope so. He makes the house feel lighter." Naomi said nothing, but when she lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling fan spinning slow circles above her bed, her daughter's words echoed louder than the doubts. "He makes the house feel lighter." The next day, Naomi arrived at the clinic to find chaos. One of the nurses had quit. Halberd was barking orders. The front desk printer was jammed again. And in the middle of it all stood Lauren Whitaker. Naomi froze. Lauren wore a sleek pantsuit, a leather portfolio in one hand, sunglasses perched on her head like a crown. "I'm here for a board meeting," she said, almost casually. Naomi blinked. "This clinic has a board?" Lauren gave her a tight smile. "You'd be surprised what connections your boss has. Philanthropy needs structure." The implication hung in the air like smog. Naomi turned back to her computer, blood pounding in her ears. "You really think this will last?" Lauren said under her breath. "A few dinners and a keychain won't erase the gap between your worlds." Naomi didn't turn, didn't look up. She simply whispered, "We'll see." That evening, she told Jackson everything. The restaurant encounter, Lauren at the clinic, the way she felt small even when she tried to stand tall. He didn't rage. He didn't run. He just sat with her on the porch, the crickets humming, Ava drawing nearby, Lena asleep inside. "She wants you to believe you're temporary," he said, "because if she convinces you of that, she doesn't have to face what she lost." Naomi looked at him. "And what do you want?" "I want you to stop shrinking around people who haven't earned your fear." Her chest ached at the truth of it. He added, "You're not temporary, Naomi. You're the first real thing I've had in years." She didn't respond right away. But this time, she didn't hold back when she reached for his hand. Saturday came draped in golden light and slow, sweet promise. For once, Naomi had no shifts, no rushed breakfasts, no juggling of schedules or last-minute calls from Halberd, just time and the quiet buzz of something building. Jackson had planned the day. "Something simple," he said. "Simple for you means valet parking," Naomi teased. He grinned. "Not today. Today, it's sandwiches and sunshine." By noon, they were in Waterfront Park, an old woven blanket laid out beneath a stretch of Spanish moss, the girls chasing dragonflies nearby. Jackson unpacked a picnic basket with quiet precision: turkey sandwiches, apple slices, trail mix in little baggies, and cookies with cartoon faces drawn in icing. "You made these?" Naomi asked, holding up a smiling cookie. Jackson shrugged. "Ava said they'd taste better if they looked happy." Naomi laughed, then bit into one. She wasn't wrong. He watched her chew, a softness in his gaze she hadn't seen before. "You know," he said, "I used to come to this park with my parents. Before everything got complicated." Naomi lay back on the blanket, shielding her eyes from the sundae. "Before the money?" He nodded. "Back then, I thought success would feel like this. Peaceful, joyful. But it didn't. It felt like pressure wrapped in gold." Naomi turned to face him. "And now? Now I think I had it all backward." She reached over and brushed a crumb from his shirt. "We're not exactly glamorous, Jackson." He grinned. "That's what I like about this. It's not polished. It's real." The girls ran back, cheeks flushed. Ava holding a flower she insisted was magical. "This makes wishes," she said, placing it gently in Naomi's palm. "But only if your heart means it." Naomi closed her fingers around it, overcome with emotion. "Thank you, baby," she whispered. "Make a wish," Ava said. Naomi glanced at Jackson, then at the sun-dappled trees, the girls, the mess of trail mix Lena had dumped onto the blanket. She didn't speak the wish, but she made it. That night, as she tucked the girls into bed, Naomi found herself pausing. "Do you miss Daddy?" Ava asked suddenly. Naomi sat beside her. "Sometimes," she said honestly, "but not in the way you might think." "Was he like Mr. Jackson?" Naomi swallowed. "No, he wasn't kind like Mr. Jackson, and he didn't stay." Ava nodded slowly, processing. "So, Mr. Jackson is new?" Naomi smiled gently. "Yes, baby, he's new." Ava snuggled into her blanket. "I like him better." Naomi bent to kiss her forehead. "Me too." Out on the porch, Jackson waited with 2 mugs of tea. "I'm starting to suspect you can read minds," Naomi said, accepting hers. "I can only read yours," he said, sipping. They sat in silence, watching the world slow around them. Across the street, porch lights flickered on. A neighbor's cat sauntered across the sidewalk. Unconcerned by time, Naomi leaned into Jackson's side, resting her head on his shoulder. "Do you ever think this is too fragile?" she asked. "That one wrong step could break it?" He didn't answer right away. "No, I think it's been tested already. I think we've seen the cracks. And we're still here." She exhaled. "I want to believe that." "You will," he said. "You're allowed to stop running." They sat for a long time, the night wrapping around them like a blanket. Naomi closed her eyes, the steady thrum of Jackson's breathing grounding her. Then softly, she said, "I didn't think I deserved this." Jackson turned. "Naomi, I'm not saying that because I want reassurance. I want you to know where I've been. I've spent so many years building walls just to survive. I didn't know how to recognize safety when it showed up. I have." He took her hand. "This isn't about deserving, Naomi. This is about choosing. I choose this. Every day." She looked up at him. "And if I falter," she whispered, "then I'll remind you," he said. "This isn't something you lose by being human." Tears welled in her eyes, uninvited but not unwelcome. He reached up, brushing one away with his thumb. "I'm not leaving." And she believed him. Not all the way, but enough. Later that night, Naomi stood in the doorway of the girls' room. Ava slept on her side, arms curled like a kitten. Lena had kicked off her blanket again. She pulled it gently over her daughter's legs, tucked it under her small feet. Then she turned off the light, leaving the door slightly ajar. And for the first time in years, Naomi didn't brace herself for the next storm. Because she wasn't standing alone anymore. The peace didn't last. It never does not when something real begins to grow. There's always a corner of the world waiting to rip through soft places, a reminder that happiness, for some people, comes with terms and conditions. It started with whispers. First, a message from a former coworker at the clinic. "You okay? Saw something weird online. Thought you should know." Then a second text from an old college acquaintance Naomi barely remembered. "Ignore the noise. You're better than this." By noon, the noise had found her. Naomi stood in the tiny staff kitchen of the senior center, her hands shaking as she held her phone. The headline on the screen was bold, cruel, and framed in digital sneers. From housekeeper to girlfriend, billionaire Jackson Whitaker's new relationship raises eyebrows. Below it, a picture of her and Jackson from the block party, her laughing, his hand on her back, the girls in mid-giggle. They looked happy, and the internet hated it. The comments were worse than the article. "Another charity case he's pretending to love. This is what happens when rich men need attention. Let me guess. She's strong and independent until the prenup comes out." Naomi closed the phone, slowly. Like it was a bomb she wasn't sure she'd disarmed. Her stomach twisted, not because she believed any of it, but because she knew what came next. Judgment. Pity. Cold stares at school drop-off. Whispers at work. Everyone questioning what she had never asked for but had dared to accept. Love. She left work early. Called Jackson on the way home, voice brittle. "You saw it?" she asked before he could say anything. "Yes," he said. "Naomi, they published our lives like we're a scandal." "I know. The girls' faces are in it." Lena's expression. Ava's hair. "They used my babies." His voice broke. "I'm sorry. I swear I didn't know." "It's not your fault," she said, then added, "but it's our reality now." He didn't argue, didn't try to fix it right away. He just asked, Do you want me to come over? She hesitated. No, not yet. And he respected that. The next morning, Naomi stood in front of her hallway mirror. She looked at her reflection, same tired eyes, same stubborn jawline, same woman who had buried parts of herself to survive. But now, she had something worth protecting. She dressed the girls in their school uniforms, packed lunches, braided Ava's hair twice, because the first one came out crooked. Then, just before stepping outside, she crouched in front of them. You might hear people say things about Mommy today, she said gently. Ava looked confused. Lena stared at her shoelaces. Someone wrote about us. On the internet. About me and Mr. Jackson. And they weren't very kind. Ava frowned. Why not? Because sometimes, Naomi said, choosing every word, people get scared when they see something different than what they're used to. And instead of asking questions or learning, they say mean things. Did we do something wrong? Ava asked. Naomi's throat clenched. No, baby, we just loved out loud. That scares people who only know how to whisper. No. Later that day, Jackson showed up at the clinic. Not with grand gestures or press statements. Just a quiet bouquet of sunflowers and a handwritten note. If they want to watch, let them. We'll give them something worth remembering. Naomi read it twice, then folded it carefully and slipped it into her purse. She still wasn't sure how to shield her daughters from the world's cruel eyes, but she was sure of this. She would not teach them to dim their light just to make others comfortable. That evening, as she made dinner, rice, beans, and pan-fried chicken, Ava played music from her tablet. Jackson sat at the kitchen table, helping Lena make paper animals. Naomi stirred the pot, listening to the laughter, the music, the sound of real life unfolding. Suddenly, Ava's voice rang out. Mommy, did you see what Principal Simmons posted? Naomi turned. Posted what? Ava showed her the school's newsletter blog. There, in neat bold print, was a post titled, Family in Every Form. The principal had written about the importance of celebrating diversity in households, single parents, grandparents, blended families, chosen families. No names were mentioned, but the message was clear. Naomi blinked, her lips trembled. Jackson came up behind her, gently placing a hand on her back. Seems like not everyone buys the tabloids. She looked up at him, hope pressing against her ribs. We're not a scandal, she whispered. No, he said. We're a beginning. Later that night, Naomi sat outside alone, mug of tea in hand, listening to the distant hum of the city. She thought about the women who had read that article, the single mothers, the tired workers, the women who had been told quietly or loudly that they were unworthy of being loved without conditions. And she realized something powerful. They weren't mad because she loved a rich man. They were mad because she didn't beg for permission to be seen. The world could scream, but she wouldn't shrink. Not anymore. Sunday morning came quietly, with low clouds and the faint scent of rain on the horizon. Naomi stood barefoot in her kitchen, coffee warm in her palms, while the girls drew with chalk on the sidewalk just outside the screen door. Inside, the radio played a low gospel tune, soft voices harmonizing like prayers whispered into a storm. Naomi let the warmth of the coffee soothe the ache still clinging to her ribs. The article had mostly faded from the trending feeds, drowned out by some new celebrity scandal, but the bruise it left subtle, invisible, lingered. In glances, at the grocery store, in the silence from two other parents at Ava's school, in the questions she knew people were too polite to ask aloud. Was she using him? What did she bring to the table? That one question kept echoing. Even Jackson, as supportive as he'd been, couldn't answer it for her. That afternoon, he invited them over. Not to the beach house or a quiet dinner, but to the Whitaker Foundation's headquarters, a restored brick building nestled in downtown Charleston. I want you to see something, he said. Naomi hesitated outside the doors. You sure we belong here? Jackson stepped beside her. You don't need to belong to a building. You already belong to me. She nodded slowly, brushing Lena's curls back as they entered. Inside, the space was nothing like she expected. No polished pretension, no sterile modern walls. It was warm. Bookshelves lined the lobby. Paintings by local youth artists hung in gilded frames. A plaque read, "For those who rise from nothing and still give back." Naomi swallowed hard. Jackson led them past a boardroom, down a hallway, and into a sunlit office. It was simple. Desk, sofa, one large window, and a nameplate on the door. Naomi James, Community Outreach Advisor, Interim. Naomi froze. "Is this a joke?" she asked, voice sharp. "No," Jackson said quietly. "It's an offer. I didn't apply for anything. You didn't have to. I've been watching you advocate for people who have nothing. You run circles around paid staff at that clinic. You volunteered for the senior center on your own time. You organize block events with nothing but a clipboard and 2 hours of sleep." Naomi's hands shook. Jackson continued, "This isn't charity, Naomi. It's a table, and I'm asking you to sit at it." The girls explored the office, Ava tracing the letters of her mother's name. Naomi stood frozen in the middle of the room. "I didn't go to college. Neither did my father," Jackson replied. "He built half of Charleston with a hammer and a vision. You've built trust, respect, community. That's harder." She turned slowly, met his eyes. "What if I fail? Then you'll learn, and you'll get better, and you'll keep going, just like you always have." She didn't respond, just walked slowly to the desk and sat down. Her hands brushed across the smooth wood, the weight of the room settling around her, not like a burden, but like a tailored coat. For the first time, Naomi wasn't just surviving in someone else's world. She had a seat in it. That night, back home, she told the girls as they ate macaroni on paper plates, "Mommy's going to start working with Mr. Jackson." Ava's eyes lit up. "Like a superhero team?" Naomi laughed. "Something like that." Lena blinked. "Do we get capes?" Naomi leaned in. "Only if you promise not to fly too far." They giggled. Noodles everywhere. And later, when the dishes were done and the girls were asleep, Naomi stood by the window and stared out at the quiet street. Jackson sat on the porch, a notebook in his lap. She joined him. "You sure you're not just trying to buy me a career?" she asked softly. He looked up. "Naomi, I don't need to buy you anything. I just needed to make room for what was already there." She exhaled, then, slowly, nodded. "I'll take the job," she said, "but on one condition." "Name it." "You let me fail sometimes." He smiled. "That's the only way to grow." She settled beside him, shoulder to shoulder. It was quiet again, but not empty. There was work ahead, pushback, maybe even betrayal. But tonight, there was also a beginning. Not as a guest in someone else's world, but as a woman building one of her own. Naomi stepped into the foundation office early Monday morning. Alone this time, her heels clicking nervously against the hardwood. The hallway smelled of lemon polish and old books, the kind of quiet dignity that could either welcome you or remind you didn't belong. She wasn't sure which it was yet. Her new desk sat near the large arched window, sunlight pouring across a modest pot of succulents Jackson had left for her with a handwritten note taped to the base. "Let light do what it does best, grow you." She smiled faintly, tucked the note into her purse. Then she logged in and began. By noon, she'd already met 2 coordinators, been briefed on 3 upcoming neighborhood initiatives, and had to explain twice that no, she wasn't the new admin, and yes, she was Naomi James, the new advisor. The title felt too big in her mouth, like wearing heels a size too large. But she didn't flinch. Not when she walked into the afternoon planning meeting with 5 department heads, all of them white, all of them older, all of them surprised. Not when the lead strategist mispronounced her name and didn't correct himself. Not even when one woman asked, far too casually, "So, how did you and Mr. Whitaker meet?" Naomi smiled, cool, calm, unreadable. "Through our children," she said. "They taught us how to trust." That shut it down. Later, Jackson stopped by with a coffee and a crooked grin. "How's your first day treating you?" Naomi raised a brow. "Like I crashed someone's wine-tasting fundraiser in church clothes." "Huh," Jackson laughed. "That bad?" "No, just different. I feel like I'm walking across a floor that tilts when I step on it." He nodded, leaned against the edge of her desk. "That's because the room wasn't built for you. But you're still allowed to be in it." She softened. "I know. I just wish I didn't have to keep reminding everyone. You won't always." Naomi looked at the spreadsheets in front of her, rows of grant numbers and proposal dates. "I want to make this count, Jackson. Not just for me, for other women like me, who never get invited to tables like this. He touched her hand briefly. Then let's build more tables. That evening, Naomi sat on the porch with her laptop open and a notepad beside her. She'd started sketching out her own proposal, something to address the lack of after-school support in her neighborhood. She was nervous, unsure, but she kept typing. Across the street, her neighbor, Mrs. Darnell, waved from her stoop. "You working for the big man now?" she called. Naomi smiled, trying to. Mrs. Darnell gave her a wink. "Make sure he doesn't forget who raised him right." Naomi laughed. "He won't." Inside, the girls were finishing homework at the kitchen table. Ava looked up and whispered something to Lena. Then both of them ran out, giggling. "Mommy," Ava said breathlessly, holding out a lopsided card made of folded construction paper. "We made you a first day at work trophy." Naomi took the card. A golden crown drawn in marker, stick figures holding hands. At the bottom, scrawled in red crayon, "Best mommy, best builder, best brave." She swallowed the lump in her throat. "Thank you," she whispered. Lena hugged her leg. "Did you change the world today?" Naomi crouched down. "Not yet, but I started." Later, as the house quieted and the girls slept, Jackson called. "Wanted to hear your voice," he said. She smiled. "Even after today?" "Especially after today." They talked about everything and nothing, city zoning issues, Lena's new obsession with glue sticks, how Ava wanted to start a lemonade stand to invest in real estate. Jackson laughed so hard he choked. "Promise me," he said, voice warm through the line. "If she ends up buying a building before she's 10, we split the profit." Naomi chuckled. "Deal." They grew quiet. Then, after a beat, Jackson said, "I'm proud of you." She exhaled. "I'm trying." "You don't have to try. You already are." That night, Naomi lay awake for a long time, staring at the ceiling fan spinning slow patterns across the room. The noise outside hadn't stopped, but something inside her had steadied. She was no longer just surviving someone else's story. She was writing her own. And this was only the beginning. It was a Tuesday when the past found Naomi again. A knock came late in the evening, too late for neighbors, too late for deliveries. The girls were asleep, sprawled across their beds like soft questions the world hadn't answered yet. Naomi tightened her robe and stepped to the door cautiously. And there he was, Deshaun, the father of her children, leaning against the porch railing like he'd been expected, like he still had the right. She didn't speak, not at first. Her hand gripped the edge of the door like a barrier. "Hey," he said, with a crooked grin that once charmed her, now just made her stomach turn. "Heard you leveled up." Naomi's voice came quiet, but steady. "How did you find me?" "Charleston ain't that big, Naomi. Word gets around. Especially when a black girl from West Oak ends up riding around with Jackson Whitaker." He said Jackson's name like it tasted bad. She didn't respond. Deshaun stuffed his hands into his pockets. "You always did know how to land on your feet, even after I left?" She interrupted. The word sharp. "Deserted. Disappeared. Pick one." His smile faltered. "I had things to figure out. You had babies to raise." Silence. "I'm not here to fight," he said eventually. I saw the article, saw the kids' pictures, my daughters, on the internet, with another man." Naomi's jaw tightened. "He's more father to them than you've ever been." "I didn't come here to be attacked," Deshaun snapped. "No," Naomi said coolly. "You came here to stir something up because for once in your life, you're not the center of the story." He took a step forward. She didn't flinch. "I want to see them," he said. "No, I got rights. You forfeited those when you walked away." His face darkened. "So this is who you are now? Some foundation queen, thinking you're better than me?" "I am better than you," she said, not with pride, but with clarity. "Not because of money, or Jackson, but because I stayed when it was hard. I loved those girls through nights they cried for a father who never showed. And now you want a photo op." His mouth opened, then closed. She stepped out onto the porch, pulling the door shut behind her. "You don't get to come back because my life looks shiny now. You weren't here when I couldn't afford diapers. You didn't call when Ava needed stitches. You didn't show when Lena cried on her birthday." His gaze flickered. Naomi took a deep breath. "If you want to be involved in their lives, you're going to have to prove it. Not to me, to them." He hesitated. So, you're not shutting me out? I'm not inviting you in either. You don't get easy. Inside, Jackson arrived 20 minutes later. Naomi hadn't called him, but he knew. Somehow, he always knew when the air around her had changed. He found her in the kitchen, scrubbing dishes she'd already washed. Who was at the door? He asked gently. She didn't answer at first. Naomi. Deshawn, she said finally. Jackson tensed. Did he threaten you? No, she said, but he reminded me why I don't trust peace, why I brace for the shoe to drop. He stepped behind her, arms circling her waist. You don't have to do that alone anymore. She exhaled. He wants to see the girls. Jackson didn't respond. I told him no, she added. Not yet. Maybe not ever. You don't owe him anything. I know, she whispered, but I owe them clarity. The next morning, Naomi sat the girls down on the couch. There's something we need to talk about, she began. Ava straightened. Lena blinked sleepily. Your dad came by last night, she said. He said he wants to see you. Ava's eyes widened. Really? Naomi nodded. I told him that if he wants to be in your lives, he has to earn it. Slowly, carefully. Is Mr. Jackson still going to be here? Lena asked, clutching her stuffed fox. Naomi pulled her onto her lap. Yes, baby. Mr. Jackson is part of our family. That doesn't change. Can you have two dads? Ava asked softly. Naomi's voice caught, but she managed to say, you can have people who love you, as long as they show up. That seemed to satisfy them. They moved on quickly, as kids do, asking about breakfast and school drop-off. But Naomi sat a little longer on that couch after they ran off. She knew the story wasn't over. The past had a way of testing everything the present built. But this time, she had truth on her side. And she wasn't going back. It was raining the morning Deshawn returned. Not the soft drizzle that Charleston locals welcomed, but a storm that rolled in like a warning sky low. Thunder rattling windows. Sidewalks slick and shimmering. Naomi stood by the living room window, one hand on her coffee, the other pressed to the glass like she could hold the day back. He had called the night before. I'm coming, he'd said. Just to talk. Just me. No drama. She'd agreed, but her gut twisted. Outside, the girls played on the rug, building castles out of old blocks. Jackson had offered to stay, but Naomi told him not today. She needed to face this one alone. Otkilens, uta, ma, onok. Naomi opened the door. Deshawn stood there, no umbrella, no bag, just soaked through and trying to look composed. You said 9, she said flatly. He offered a half smile. Guess I wanted to prove I can be early to something. She stepped aside. Inside, the room was quiet. Lena looked up first. Ava followed. Naomi had told them Deshawn was coming. But neither girl knew quite what to feel. Deshawn stood awkwardly in the entryway, dripping water onto the floor. Hey, he said to the girls, voice unsure. I'm your dad. Lena blinked. Ava frowned. You don't look like the pictures. He chuckled nervously. Yeah, well, life. Naomi stood back, watching. This was his moment. But she wouldn't let him harm what she'd built. Deshawn crouched. I know I haven't been here. I know you've had questions, and I wasn't there to answer them. I've done a lot wrong. But I'm trying now. Ava crossed her arms. Are you going to leave again? That stopped him cold. I don't want to, he said. Naomi saw it, the flicker in Ava's eyes. That child's hunger for a parent's presence, no matter how late it came. It made her heart ache. Can we ask you questions? Ava asked. Deshawn nodded. Where were you when I had my broken arm? She said. He swallowed. I was in Atlanta. I didn't know. You didn't call Mommy. No, I didn't. Lena spoke next, voice small. Do you know what my favorite animal is? He hesitated. Fox? Lena's eyes lit up, just slightly. Yeah. He smiled, soft. Lucky guess. Naomi cleared her throat. Girls, can you give us a minute? They obeyed, reluctantly. When the door shut behind them, Deshawn stood. I'm not here to take anything from you, he said. I'm not trying to be Jackson. Naomi folded her arms. Good, because that seat's not empty. He nodded. I see that. He's a good man. She was quiet. I messed up. Deshawn continued. For years, I thought if I avoided it all, the guilt would fade. But it didn't. I kept seeing them in my dreams, kept hearing their voices when I passed playgrounds. I started sending money last year, small amounts. Couldn't bring myself to attach my name. Naomi blinked. That was you? Yeah. You think money makes up for what you missed? No, he said, but it's the only thing I had that didn't ask questions. She sat down. So why now? Why show up? Because I saw how strong they are, and I realized they're becoming people. Not just my kids in theory. People. With stories and questions and faces I don't know, and I want to know them before it's too late. Naomi leaned back. Rain tapped softly against the windows. I'm not going to fight you, she said, but you don't get to waltz in and rewrite the ending. You come in slow, controlled, earned. He nodded. Okay, you meet with them here. No unsupervised visits. No promises. No guilt. He nodded again. And if you disappear again, she added, I tell them the truth. No sugarcoat. He looked at her, ashamed. Fair. Naomi stood. I'll let you say goodbye. He walked to the girls' room and knelt beside the doorway. I hope I can come back sometime, he told them. Maybe, Ava said, if you don't lie. Lena handed him her paper fox. You can keep this. For remembering. His eyes welled. Thank you, baby girl. Naomi didn't cry. Not this time. She just watched the man who had broken her heart kneel before the two reasons she had kept living. And for the first time, she didn't feel broken. She felt chosen. Later, she told Jackson everything. They sat on his back porch, the sky painted in lavender dusk. You okay? He asked. Yeah, she said. I think I had to see him. One last time, not for closure, for clarity. Jackson slid his arm around her. You're incredible, you know. She leaned into him. I'm just tired of running. You're allowed to rest. She nodded. He kissed her temple, whispered, You're doing it, all of it. The hard, holy work of becoming. And in that quiet moment, she finally believed it. 6 months later, the world hadn't quieted, but Naomi had changed how she moved through it. The Foundation's latest outreach initiative, a summer program for low-income families, had just wrapped with a community block party on the east side. Naomi stood behind a long table, handing out popsicles and hugging mothers she'd once stood beside in food pantry lines. Kids ran barefoot, old men played dominoes, a band of teenagers played jazz that made even the elders nod in approval. And Naomi? She belonged, not as someone's plus one, not as the girl with a sad past. As Naomi James, Community Outreach Director. No interim, no asterisk. That morning, Jackson had pulled her aside before the event. I've been thinking, he said. It's time we make some updates. Naomi raised an eyebrow. To the Foundation? He took her hand. To our life. She paused, suddenly alert. I don't mean anything huge. Not yet, Jackson said, laughing at her wide eyes. Just, we've done this for a while now. The girls are settled. You're thriving. And me? I wake up with your coffee in my cup and your voice in my head. She smirked. That sounds slightly invasive. He laughed. It sounds like home. She didn't reply, just leaned forward and kissed him. Not rushed, not tentative, certain. Back at the block party, Naomi noticed Deshawn sitting on the curb with Ava and Lena, watching the street performers. He didn't come often, but when he did, he showed up with snacks and folding chairs, the kind of presence that didn't expect applause. She respected that. He looked up and caught her gaze. She gave him a small nod. He nodded back. It was the most peace they'd ever shared. After the cleanup, Naomi walked alone through the now empty lot, her heels in one hand, a clipboard in the other. She stopped in the center of the space and looked around. 6 months ago, she had stood in this same spot, terrified of failing. Now, it felt like a stage she had earned. Jackson appeared at her side, holding a small paper bag. You forgot your sandwich. She smiled. Thanks. They sat on a bench. The sun dipped low. You remember when we first met? He asked. She laughed. You mean when I stood you up and cried in a parking lot? Best heartbreak of my life. She leaned on his shoulder. Do you still hear the noise? Every day, he said. But now, I've got something louder. What's that? He touched her hand. You. Later that evening, back home, Naomi tucked the girls into bed. Ava clutched a new book about women in history. Lena was already snoring. Naomi paused at the doorway. Mom, Ava called sleepily. Yes, baby. You think we'll stay here forever? Naomi smiled. We'll stay where the love is. That's home. Ava nodded, eyes fluttering closed. Downstairs, Naomi walked into her study, the one Jackson had helped her paint sea glass green. On the desk sat a new nameplate. Sent by the board just that morning. Naomi James, Director, Equity and Community Transformation. She touched the smooth edge of it, then sat down. She opened her laptop and began typing a proposal for a neighborhood kitchen. Not for press. Not for prestige. For people like her past and present who needed dignity. Not charity. Outside, the porch light flicked on. Inside, the air was still. The room didn't hum with expectation anymore. It hummed with purpose. She didn't need to knock. The door had always been hers. Naomi's journey teaches us that dignity is not something granted by wealth or status. It's claimed through resilience, self-respect, and the courage to stand firm in your truth. Her story reminds us that even when the world tries to define your worth by your past, your strength lies in how you choose to write your future. Love, when grounded in respect and patience, can heal. But, more importantly, self-worth must come first, because the most powerful transformation begins the moment you stop asking for a seat and start building your own table.